Hi, I'm Linda Whitten. I'm back again to continue with the underpainting that we've done here. I've finished the underpainting. I'm just going to continue with putting pastel over the top. So first thing I'm going to do is put my little dust catcher down there. And then I decided I'm not going to actually put the pastel primer over there to give it the grit. It's a very textured watercolour, rough watercolour paper, so I'm thinking that I'll get enough pastel staying on there as it is. I'm just going to be using this set of pastels, the Mungo handmade set. It's only the second time I've used them. I've done a review on them, so try not to keep getting in your way here, but there are a lot of pastels and I need to keep reaching over to them. I couldn't find a better way to set it up, so we'll see how we go with it. And because they're new pastels, I haven't actually taken all the papers off. I'll be doing that as I go, so sorry if that slows us down. It's got a lovely range of earth colours, so I'll just be taking off the paper and cracking them in half, snapping them in half. So I'm just going to start laying some of the colours over, and what I'm going for is to lay some complementary colours over the top of each other to try and get some nice texture going in the rocks. Now this is a very even textured watercolour surface. It was just the thickest sheet I had in there, so I grabbed it out. So it just means that I want to be careful I don't get it all too regular and it starts to look too artificial. I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to be using complementary colours, so I've just used the yellow over the magenta, and now I'm pulling out a purpley, a lilac-y, pinky colour, and I'm going to be trying that over some of the more yellow colours, the earthier colours, and I'm just going to lay it in and do a little bit over various areas so that I can just tie them together. So it won't always be over the complementaries, but just getting a rough idea for how I feel about using them. So I'm just laying in those colours. I might even put a little bit of this back here on the range there, maybe a slight touch of it down through there. And I'll just keep doing that, working my way around the painting and just using all the various colours that I've got in here, trying them out. It's a good exercise for me to try out the various colours that I've got and start using them. Now I want to keep to the brighter palette that I've started with. And some of these lighter yellows will just be reinforcing other areas of yellow and making some little, I can use these to tidy up the edges too, so that's what I'm doing here, just tidying and reinforcing the edges with some pastel. If I find that I'm not keeping enough pastel on the paper, I can give it a spray of fixative and then put the pastel primer on, but I'm hoping it's going to be enough. And now I want to smarten up those edges a bit. And I'll also have a try and see what blending will do as well. I don't want to blend too much, but because this is just a little exercise in loosening up a bit and trying some different things, I do want to have a little try. There's a nice patch down there where I've just gone in over the magentas with the yellow. I'm going to put some more pinks in there, so I'm going into my pinky range and pulling out a fairly bright pink. The Mungo full set that I've got has a big range of quite vibrant pinks and purples and fuchsias, which you don't tend to get in other sets, and it's quite, I've been sort of wondering where I'm going to use them, some of them, but now it's a good time to experiment with them because I've gone for these vivid colours. And I usually have a more natural palette, although I do tend towards bright colours. I like a lot of colour, but some of these are even brighter than I would generally use, so it'll be interesting to see what I can, how I can use them. So I'm getting some rock-like texture there. I want to be careful in the water areas that I don't try and make it too rock-like. So right now I'm just going to have a little play in the water, so to speak. Just taking a very light blue, and I'm just going to lay some in and then see how it responds to a little bit of blending. But not too bad. I lose some of the texture of the rock, which is what I'm after. So here's another blue. Just going to put some of that in. I'm just going to weave some of the blues into the water here. They're reflecting the sky colour, but they've also got some of the reflections from these rocks in them as well. Just adding in a bit of that and giving it a little blend. I just need a little bit of a blend with these ones to keep that, as I said, to keep the water looking smoother than the rock surface. I want to do a whole lot more, and here I'm going to pop in some of the deeper tones as well, just reinforce some of those dark areas. Maybe put a little bit more dark in some of these areas. In that pool, I'm just making some darker edges. So as with the acrylics, I can do a bit of drawing as well as scrumbling. I can do some linear work in here. If I think I've messed it up, I can just use my finger. I could also go back in with some alcohol if I wanted to, and wash some of this in if I aren't happy with the results. I'm just going to keep trying some of these darker pastels and see what kind of results I get from using those. Reinforce some of the verticals there in the shadowed areas of the rock where they're coming down. Then blend a little bit as well, just to add a little bit of interest. You don't want it all to be the same texturally, and it's good. We'll run a little bit along there too. I'm interested in putting some lighter colours in there as well. So I'm looking for some of the lighter, softer sort of pale grey colours. The greys. To give it again a bit of a rock-like characteristic. Some overtones of the grey rock. That was the basis for this before the lichen and so on. So I've used a warm white there, and I'm going into warm grey. I'm going into a more steely blue sort of grey now. So I'll just add that in some of the spots where I've got the other grey. So it's a little bit of a deeper, bluer grey than the other one I was using, and I'll just add some little bits in there. Another little bit up there. I'm putting the blues next to the pinks here, so that'll work quite nicely, and over some of those magentas, and then giving it a bit of a blend just to see what happens. Didn't really like what I did up there, so I'm just going to extend it out with I'm just going to reinforce the water there. Maybe a little bit darker out here. Mix in a few different blues. I'm not sure I'm so happy with that. It's adding sparkle, but I just think it's a bit too rough. And it might be that I go back in with that with some, I don't know. We'll think about that. It might be that just needs a little run of alcohol along it to kind of smooth out some of that. I'm going to put in a bit of a white though there as well, just for some little wavelets on the water there. I might even put in, use a bit of the white in the sky for some cloud effects. But I won't just leave it at white, I'll put in a couple of different light colours. I'm trying to cover up a bit of the ink that I got there I don't want. And I'll put in some very, just need to find a really pale pink if I've got one. That's fairly pale. Put a little bit of pink in there as well. Just to give it a, and that pale pink might get a little touch up in here as well. Maybe in there. And it's pink, but it's actually helping it to grey out a bit when it goes over the top of some of these other colours. So it's giving me a little bit of a rock-like texture. And I'm just varying the way my hand goes on, so my hand moves. So I'm moving my hand around a little bit. And this is something I try and tell my class to do. When you're applying pastels, don't do it all in one direction all the time, because it gets a bit stilted and boring. You want to put in, break it into smaller pieces and then move it around with your hand like so. Just helps you to get a little bit more interest, and especially in this rock where we don't want it all to be going the one way. I'm kind of forgetting about this section over here, so I'm going to put in a little bit of the pinks there. Back to this colour here, which is, and a pale blue. And I'm just mixing those on the paper. I don't want it to get into the top of my mountain, so I'm going back into that. I'm just reinstating that with a bit of a purple pastel and then a bit of blue coming over the top of that. This I want to have a bit more texture, and I think I'm going in for maybe even this colour, a bit of a yellow over the top of it, a couple of different yellows, just to, it was looking a bit too wet and slick and I didn't want that look. So I want it to be a bit more rock-like. So that is coming along. You can at this stage say, well, yeah, it's okay, but I want to do something different. And I can dip my brush back into water or to alcohol. In this case, I'm just trying a bit of water to push some of that pastel in again, because you might not be entirely happy with what you've done. So just using a bit of water will push it in a bit to the paper and sort of glaze over the inks that we've put on beforehand. So you can get rid of that granular look if you think you've gone a bit overboard with it, just by dipping the brush in water and then giving it a bit of a move around. Just thinking, is there anywhere else I want to do that? Maybe there. If I use alcohol, I'll get a different look altogether. It will do it a bit more smoothly. I don't want to mess around with it too much, just wanted to knock a little bit of the texture off. I'm just looking for my alcohol. That sounds good, doesn't it? So if I dip it in alcohol, and maybe you can see it really dissolves it much better than the water does. And I'm getting a very pink glaze over that, which I don't actually mind. So I can do that in parts. It keeps some of the texture and then knocks back some of it, so that you get you can keep some of your texture but not all of it, and it makes quite a nice glaze. So you don't just have to stay with the raw pastel. I really liked how it glazed over the white there with that yellow. You can see on these little spots I've caught the very tip of my brush on it, and it's made a very dark linear mark there, which I'm not so keen on, but I can go back over that with a bit of pastel if I want to. So it is an opportunity now to get some more texturing of a different sort if you want to. And that dries very, very quickly, so you can go back into it again. So here I'm just putting a little bit of the alcohol on. And the alcohol does dry very quickly. I don't really like the effect I've got up here, so I'm going to alcohol wash quite a bit of this and just leave some small amounts of it and hope that that will give me a bit of variety in the rocks there. And if you just sort of stab your brush on it, it will pick up some of it, dissolve some of it, and then it will move on, and I'm going to tint that rock there as well, and it will leave some of it a little bit smoother, so you can get a bit of a random look, which is good because it's natural. Nature is often random. I know sometimes it's not, but it's often random, and so you can help recreate that by letting your brush just do a few things it wants to do itself without getting too in control. And I'm just running that alcohol up there over the mountain too, because I think I overdid that a little bit. It's kind of a little bit reminiscent of the tops of trees there as I run the alcohol over the deep blues and purples that I put up there. So I could do that also in the water if I want to, in those waves, and by using the alcohol I can wash it out a bit and make more structured wave shapes. So I don't have to do that, but if I don't like the way I'm going, I can do that and just give a little bit more of a washy effect. if I think there's too much texture from the paper underneath. So the texture's quite open here and regular, and if I were to put on the pastel primer, which I may do in some areas, then it will be a finer grit and make a different sort of texture. So I'm actually just going to take the alcohol and really run it over the water in the background there, trying not to run it up into the mountain, and give myself a bit of depth out on the horizon. It kind of intensifies, because it's moving, dissolving the pastel, it intensifies the colour of it, so the alcohol will really wash into that pastel, dissolving it and intensifying it. So that is a little thing I can do if I'm not really happy with the value that I've got. Blues, and get a kind of cloud going on up there. Might add a little bit of that blue to the base of these clouds here. And that's disguising the trouble I had with the texture. I've got a nice soft smalt blue here, and I'm just going to get the paper off that and have a go with that and see how we go. Add that in. Then I'm just going to get my finger in there and give it a real push into the paper there, into the texture of the paper. Going back in with the very light one. Right, I might drop a little bit of those colours into the water there that I've used up in the sky and those clouds, so just a touch of them in to simulate a bit of suggest a bit of the clouds reflecting in the water. There, I'm going to put in a bit of this warm white and add that into the clouds as well. Just pop a little bit of it up here in the area that you would expect to be reflecting down. I'll put a little bit of that in there too. Give it a bit of a blend, just blending down. There's stark bits of white which I'm not so keen on, so they're going to get a bit of treatment from darker pastel. And I've got some browns in here I haven't tried, so I think I'm going to go in with some browns as well and give them a bit of work and see what my browns look like. Maybe put a few deeper browns over in this area. I'm just going in with a little bit of pastel primer in a few spots. I don't think I'm going to put it everywhere, just some places. And when I put it over the pastel that's already there, because it's a wet mixture, it's going to pick up some of that, but it's not so problematic. I just want to have a little bit of, we'll see how things go with it in. I'm not 100% sure how it will be, but like I said, just a bit of experimentation going on there. It will make a different surface than the other one I'm using, the watercolour surface, so again it should mix things up a little bit, which is all good. And I'm using some neat and some a little bit watered down, so that will give a finer and a grittier texture. It's interesting because there's a new pastel. Some of the pastel is really picking up and some of it it's not. So the mango pastels, as with most pastel sets, have some that are much harder and some that are much softer. So some of the softer ones it's picking up and some of the harder ones it's not really doing much to at all. So that rock's going to get a little bit of the texture as well. So not only is this putting on the grit, the finer grit, it's also mixing in the colours, the pastel I've already got there. Okay, so that just needs to dry, and all that was the Colour Fix Primer Art Spectrum. It's the clear one, so it looks white but it comes up clear, dries clear. So that's dried now. It's only been a few minutes and it's already dry. It goes on easily, dries off quickly. So now I'm just going to go back in with a few, and it has made a little difference to the surface there. Just going to add in a few different layers of colours there. And they're layering quite well over the other pastels underneath that Colour Fix too, without moving them at all. So I'm just getting in now a little bit more texture. And they blend a bit smoother with the that primer on as well. So I'm just, I don't want to do too much blending, but just some of the areas are getting a little bit. And I'm just brightening up the face of these rocks here. Mixing up some of my colours a wee bit and really getting some layered effects now, which can look really quite good. And again, I don't want it to be all the same, so some of it's getting a bit of a smooth out, some of it's staying quite rough. And texturise, and then there's a few edges going on in various places as well. And I'm introducing some of these pinks over here as well. There. I don't want to go too berserk down in this area, because it'll just detract away from this. That's very bright, and I'm not sure I should have done that. So that might get a little bit of a knockback now. It's supposed to be shadowed area, but it's kind of taking me away from this area up here. Not sure about it. I think maybe what it needs is just re-emphasise some of that lighter work going up through here to draw me back up into this area. So that I come and I've got a pathway back into the rest of the painting there. There's some little pools of water, but I need to maybe do some more work on those and make them a little bit more realistic as water. So maybe add in some light into it as well. Some lighter areas of the water, which I can blend in. Getting some in there, maybe a little pool of water there. Oh, and this was some water down here, so I'm just putting in some lighter tones amongst the darker bits of water. This is going to be some water, so I'll get in some little areas, but not make all of it so watery, just some pools of it, and maybe make some more landy sort of rocky textures there to contain that pool. That's better. That's obviously too pink, so I need to go back in and add in some other colours as well and kind of help it to emerge a bit with that area. That purple's quite good, so rosy colour, let's bring that into there a bit as well. And if I bring a little bit of it up into the shadowed area, that might serve to knock it back slightly. Might actually take some of it through here too, because it's starting to look a bit too set apart there. So if I can introduce a few of the greys into it that are kind of overlapping into this area, that might help to tie it in a bit. So some quite strong areas of it, and then some more subdued. Bring a bit of it into this area too. And you know what, this area is getting it as well. I think this is a sort of a grey unifying colour I'm going to be running through some of the areas just to... It's just hard to know when to stop, isn't it? But we might call that done for now. So let's have a little look at it. There are areas I'm not greatly happy with. This is one of those areas. I like it on its own, but in the context of the whole painting, I find that that's too dark and that's too dark, and I'm losing the middle. So I'm actually going to go back in there with some quite dark colours there and try and loosen off this, or just make it not so stark there. So I might add in a bit of that colour at the edges there, so there's not such a transition. I don't think that's working either. You know, it's just experimentation, isn't it? And sometimes it works it just all goes as planned. Other times it's just a bit not quite how you want it, and you're not quite sure what to do to get it back. But what I'm trying to do is introduce some more of the general colours from each area into each other area whilst keeping the predominant colour there. So this was predominantly the warm colours, and I'm trying to introduce some of those deeper, darker, richer colours into it to help with it. And here, I don't want to attract my eye to it too much, but I think it's being a little bit too smooth, and that is attracting my eye. So I'm just going to add in some areas of, so that there's not such a transition between that area and this area. Do I love it? Probably not. Do I like it? Well, it's been really interesting to play with it. Do I love it? Perhaps not. But have I enjoyed it? Yes, I have. It's been fun to play with all that ink, with applying pastel in different ways over the top of it. And I think it's a dynamic sort of painting. I haven't got all the elements right, but it's been a really good experiment. And so I'd encourage you to have a really good experiment. Play with your art media and combine them and see what you can come up with. Thanks for joining me in the studio. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.